build legends, but it can also destroy them. Some of the greatest bands in history weren't torn apart by rivals or fading popularity. They were destroyed from within. Ego, addiction, betrayal, and tragedy turned genius into chaos. This is the story of brilliance consumed by darkness. Tonight, we count down 10 genius bands that destroyed themselves in the most tragic ways. Number 10, Oasis. Oasis burst onto the scene in the 1990s as the face of Britpop. Their music was anthemic, powerful, and spoke to millions. With hits like Wonderwall and Don't Look Back in Anger, Noel Gallagher's songwriting genius and Liam Gallagher's raw charisma made them unstoppable. For a moment, it seemed Oasis might become the Beatles of their generation. But behind the brilliance, there was chaos. The Gallagher brothers' relationship was toxic, constant insults, physical fights, and a war of egos that never ended. Every tour became a battlefield, every recording session a test of survival. Instead of channeling their genius into unity, they tore each other apart in public. By 2009, the inevitable happened. Backstage in Paris, Noel walked away after another explosive fight. Oasis was over. They didn't just break up, they collapsed in front of the world. Fans were left with timeless songs, but also the bitter knowledge that this genius band had destroyed itself from within. Number 9, Guns N' Roses. In the late 80s, Guns N' Roses were the most dangerous band in the world. Their debut, Appetite for Destruction, remains one of the greatest rock albums ever recorded. Axl Rose's intensity, Slash's guitar genius, and Duff McKagan's raw edge created a perfect storm of brilliance. But with success came poison. Drugs and alcohol consumed the band, while Axl's unpredictable behavior made working with him nearly impossible. Concerts started late, fights broke out on stage, and lawsuits piled up. The genius of Guns N' Roses was slowly strangled by chaos. By the mid-1990s, the classic lineup was gone. Axl carried on with a new band under the same name, but it was never truly Guns N' Roses. Their genius had burned too bright, too fast, and their self-destruction remains one of rock's greatest tragedies. Number 8, Sex Pistols. The Sex Pistols didn't just play music, they declared war on society. Their songs were raw, angry, and revolutionary. For a brief moment in the late 70s, they embodied the pure essence of punk genius. But the Pistols were doomed from the start. Sid Vicious fell into heroin addiction. The band was constantly embroiled in scandal, and their management exploited them more than guided them. Their U.S. tour in 1978 was a disaster, ending with Johnny Rotten walking off stage, sneering, "Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?" Within 2 years, the Sex Pistols were gone. Sid Vicious would die from an overdose shortly after. Their legacy is massive, but their collapse was fast, brutal, and tragic. A genius fire that burned itself out almost instantly. Number 7, Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac's Rumors is one of the most brilliant albums ever made, selling over 40 million copies worldwide. But what gave the album its power was also what nearly destroyed the band: heartbreak and betrayal. The members were entangled in failed relationships, affairs, and bitter personal battles. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham's breakup spilled into the studio, while Christine and John McVie's marriage collapsed. Even drummer Mick Fleetwood was caught in his own tangled love drama. The band was brilliant, but it was brilliance built on pain. Somehow, out of the chaos, they created timeless music. But behind the success was devastation. Fleetwood Mac survived commercially, but emotionally they were shattered. Their genius was undeniable, but it came at the cost of nearly destroying the people who made it. Number 6, The Doors. The Doors were unlike anything the world had seen. Jim Morrison's haunting voice and poetic lyrics elevated rock into something deeper, something transcendent. Songs like Riders on the Storm and Light My Fire were pure genius. But Morrison's brilliance was matched by his demons. He drank heavily, abused drugs, and spiraled into unpredictable behavior. Concerts often descended into chaos, arrests followed, and the strain on the band grew unbearable. His genius was real, but so was his self-destruction. In 1971, Morrison was found dead in a Paris apartment bathtub at just 27. Without him, the Doors could not survive. Their rise was meteoric, their collapse devastating, a genius cut short by tragedy. Number 5. Nirvana. Nirvana was more than a band. They were the voice of an entire generation. Kurt Cobain's songwriting genius, paired with the raw energy of Chris Novoselic and Dave Grohl, gave birth to grunge and redefined music in the 1990s. But Cobain's genius carried unbearable weight. He struggled with addiction, depression, and the crushing pressure of fame. The more successful Nirvana became, the more Kurt withdrew into darkness. Fame felt like a prison, and he couldn't escape. In April 1994, Cobain's suicide shattered Nirvana in an instant. Their end was sudden, brutal, and heartbreaking. Nirvana didn't just disband, they were ripped apart by tragedy, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance and sorrow. Number 4. Pink Floyd. Few bands reached the artistic heights of Pink Floyd. Albums like The Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall showcased their genius in sound and vision. They weren't just musicians, they were architects of emotion. But genius often breeds conflict. Roger Waters' dominance clashed with David Gilmour's vision, fracturing the band into bitter camps. The fights spilled into lawsuits, with Waters leaving and battling Gilmour over the band's very name. Pink Floyd, once united, was torn apart by ego and pride. Though they achieved occasional reunions, the damage was permanent. Pink Floyd's collapse wasn't fast. It was slow, painful, and tragic. Their genius could not survive their own divisions. Number 3. Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin was rock at its most powerful. With Jimmy Page's guitar, Robert Plant's voice, John Paul Jones's musicianship, and John Bonham's thunderous drumming, they were untouchable. Their genius shaped rock forever. But in 1980, tragedy struck. John Bonham died after a night of heavy drinking. For Zeppelin, there was no replacement, no way forward without him. The band announced their end, declaring they could not continue as Led Zeppelin without Bonham. Their decision was noble, but devastating. The greatest band of the 1970s ended not because of decline, but because of loss. Their collapse was sudden, tragic, and final. Number 2, the Beatles. The Beatles were the most influential band in history. Their music changed culture, shaped generations, and elevated rock into art. Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starr were geniuses, each in their own right. But their brilliance could not hold them together. Creative differences grew, business disputes poisoned relationships, and personal lives pulled them in different directions. By 1970, the world's greatest band had collapsed under its own weight. The Beatles' breakup was the most tragic in music history, not because they lost fans or faded into obscurity, but because the world watched 4 geniuses destroy the greatest partnership in rock. Number 1, Queen. Queen embodied brilliance. Freddie Mercury's unmatched voice, Brian May's soaring guitar, and their fearless creativity gave the world anthems like Bohemian Rhapsody and We Are the Champions. They weren't just geniuses, they were larger than life. But in 1991, tragedy struck. Freddie Mercury's death from AIDS complications ended Queen as the world knew it. His passing was not just the loss of a singer, but the collapse of one of the most genius bands in history. Though Queen continues in different forms, the magic of the original lineup is gone. Their story is the ultimate tragedy, a band too brilliant, too unique, to survive the loss of its heart.